Hello and welcome back to Vanished Memories, a channel specifically dedicated to getting lesser known true crime and missing persons cases out there. My name is Brianna, and today we will be delving into the absolutely heart-wrenching case of Ivy Marie Leinen. If you are interested in these types of videos and this type of content, please do subscribe as I put out videos every Wednesday. Before I fully start this case, I do just want to mention that I am in a new background at this moment. I actually am on a small vacation to Toronto in Canada, but I still wanted to film and get this video up, so that's why it looks a little bit different than my normal setup location. Also, before I fully delve into this case, I do just want to give a very large trigger or content warning for what I'm about to go over. This case is about an 11-year-old young girl who went missing in 2010, and some of the details of this case are kind of descriptive and can be very upsetting to listen to. Additionally, this case will be slightly different than other cases that I've done due to the fact that Ivy has actually been declared deceased even though her body has not been found yet. Viewer discretion is, of course, advised. With that being said, let's get into the absolutely heart-wrenching case of Ivy Marie Leinen, who went missing on March 14th of 2010 from Poplar, Montana. Before I fully get into the day that she went missing, I do want to talk a lot about her background, as that will be something that will constantly come up and is a big theme throughout this case. So Ivy was born on March 2nd of 1999 to her mother, Anita. I was not able to find any information about her biological father. However, I was able to find that she does have a foster father named Christopher. Ivy would be born in a community called Wolf Point, Montana. Wolf Point is a very small city, and even to this day, Wolf Point only has about 2,600 members of its community. However, it is the largest community on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. Ivy would only live in Wolf Point, however, until about 2001, so about 2 years after her birth. In 2001, her and her mother, Anita, would relocate to western Montana in a city called Deer Lodge. Shortly after, though I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is for this, they would move to another city called Butte in Montana. Only shortly after this, in 2005, Ivy and her mother, Anita, would actually relocate to live with Ivy's grandparents, or Anita's parents, and their names were Paul and Rhonda. At this time, they all lived together in Poplar, Montana, where this case would go on to take place in 2010. So it was said that when Ivy was younger, she was a very happy child. She enjoyed butterflies, Barbies, and the changing of seasons. She also enjoyed dancing in rain puddles and was known to have a very unique sense of humor, and she also liked to do artwork. Specifically, she liked to create caricatures. Though Ivy was initially a very happy and carefree child, Ivy would unfortunately suffer from being bullied while she attended school. At the time of this case, Ivy was 11 years old and attended 5th grade at Culbertson School. It was at this school where Ivy unfortunately would be a victim of bullying by her peers. Her peers often would bully her for being different and being diagnosed with autism. After the time that this case took place, Ivy's mother, Anita, would speak about her daughter's school experience, explaining that it was hell, and all her daughter really wanted to do was reach out to her peers and make friends. Shortly after this case, her mother, Anita, was interviewed and was quoted as saying, "My daughter did not choose to be the way she was, and she should have been treated better," which is absolutely correct. No one, especially children, should have to deal with torment and bullying from their peers, especially in a place where they're expected to be safe. Even if schools allege to have very strict anti-bullying policies, which it's likely that the Culbertson School does, things like this still happen. Unfortunately, it was described that what would happen during Ivy's school day would often cause her to be very upset, and eventually it seemed as though her mental state in general seemed to decline. Her mom would go on to say that there was no proof that she was trying to hurt herself, but it was not right the way that she was treated because she was different. And if they'd been a little kinder and a little smarter, maybe her last year wouldn't have been so horrible. With that being said, let's get into the day that Ivy Marie Leinen went missing. As I mentioned, on the day of March 14th, 2010, Ivy would have been 11 years old. In fact, she would have just hit her 11th birthday on March 2nd of that year. At the time, she was 5'7" and approximately 185 pounds. She also was Caucasian and had brown hair and brown eyes. It was known that Ivy also had a few distinguishing characteristics, which made her stand out from others. Ivy was known to have had 2 strawberry birthmarks, which I unfortunately was not able to find an exact picture of, but I will attach on screen what those birthmarks might have looked like. These birthmarks were on her left shoulder as well as on her right side of her head, though it was known that her hair did cover that birthmark. She also had a large scar on the inside of her left wrist, as well as a small scar on the center of her forehead, though I wasn't able to determine what those scars were from, but it was known that she did have those scars at the time that she went missing. So Ivy would leave her home that day, and it was reported that she had been wearing a dark pink and maroon floral print knee-length sleeveless dress, blue and white sneakers, as well as socks that had white, black, and pink stripes and poodles on them. Ivy would leave her family home that day at approximately 4 p.m. with 4 of her family dogs with the intention of taking them on a walk. In looking at the weather history for this day, it seems that it was pretty average weather for Montana that time of year. It seems as though the average temperature for that day likely would have been around 35 degrees, so just above freezing. Presumably, Ivy had walked her dogs several times by herself before, and it seems as though her parents and the family that lived with her did not have any qualms about her doing this that day. However, unfortunately, this would be the last time that they would see Ivy alive. Only shortly after Ivy would leave for this walk, about 15 to 20 minutes later, her 4 dogs would actually return to the family home, but without Ivy. Shortly after arriving back home, the family would go out and search for Ivy, but after not finding any sign of where she was or where she could have gone, they decided to contact the authorities for their help. Now, the jurisdiction in this case is actually a little bit confusing, and there are some conflicts. This is due to the fact that where the family had resided was actually in Richland County, but Ivy is believed to have gone missing in Roosevelt County. This was not thoroughly explained as to why it was believed that she had gone missing in this other county. However, I'm inclined to believe that it's possible that maybe the property that Ivy lived on was right on the border of those 2 counties, and it's likely that she could have gone into Roosevelt County to walk the dogs that day. Currently, the investigating agency is listed as the Richland County Sheriff's Office, so I will be leaving that information on the screen as well as in the description box below. What is important though is that even though there was conflicting jurisdictions within this case, which can often cause problems, both counties were able to join forces and put their efforts together in the search for Ivy. So police from both counties would actually start a coordinated search effort for her, and together they would combine their resources and manpower. They would organize volunteer search parties, helicopter and plane flyovers, bring their cadaver dogs, and also bring out 4-wheelers in the search. Unfortunately, what would be found during the search is absolutely heartbreaking, so a trigger warning for the next about 30 seconds of this video. The police were eventually able to actually find tracks from both Ivy and her 4 dogs, which would lead them to the Missouri River, which was frozen over at the time. In continuing to follow these tracks, the authorities were led to an area that stopped at the edge of open water, and unfortunately, Ivy's tracks also stopped with it. The indication, of course, was that she had fallen in, and there was no indication that she had been able to turn back. It's possible that Ivy could have fallen into this open area of water when the ice possibly cracked due to the fact that it could have been a thinner area, and the temperature in that area was known to be above freezing at the time and continuing to rise. What was actually even more heartbreaking in researching this case was the fact that investigators, when they were led to this area of open water, actually found that the 4 dogs had tracked several times around the open area of water, possibly indicating that they had gone along that area in order to try to help Ivy, but unfortunately were unable to do so and would go back home for help. After this revelation was discovered, there was sonar equipment that was actually borrowed from the North Dakota Fish and Game Department, and it was used to sweep the bottom of the river in order to look for Ivy, or of course Ivy's body at this point. Unfortunately, there would be no sign of her with the use of that sonar equipment. It seemed as though the searches for her body did continue for a few months that year, but unfortunately it's been known that those searches did cease in June of that year. Ivy's mother, Anita, is of course very upset at the fact that the law enforcement agency decided to cease searches and stop looking for her daughter Ivy. She was quoted around the time that these searches had stopped saying, "I'm really the only one actually trying to keep the search going." Anita would go on to say that both her and Ivy's foster father, Christopher, want so desperately to move on, but unfortunately feel as though they can't do that until they get Ivy's body back. and unfortunately, they don't believe that that will happen. Law enforcement officials would go on to say that they do want to find Ivy as much as anyone else, but according to them, there are dilemmas in the searching. They go on to say, the things we've run into are getting something set up and the weather. The Richland County Sheriff's Office apparently hasn't been able to organize a search, but Sheriff Brad Bache has actually been quoted as saying that he himself had flown the river several times with a local pilot as well as a pilot from Poplar, Montana, but they were unable to find anything. As far as I can tell, however, there have been no more ground or river searches since they ceased those searches in June of 2010. The aftermath of this case is unfortunately just as heavy as the details of Ivy Marie Leinen's disappearance. Even though Ivy's body was never found, she was officially declared deceased. This seemed to happen pretty soon on after the authorities had discovered that area of open water, as I was able to find that Ivy's obituary was published on March 16th, just 2 days after she went missing. Additionally, there was also a funeral service held, which was held on March 18th, only 2 days after her obituary and 4 days after she was reported as missing. After Ivy's disappearance and pronounced death, it was said that Ivy's classmates actually reached out to Ivy's mother, Anita, with apology cards. They had given Ivy's mother, Anita, several cards detailing their apologies for the way that they had treated Ivy. I am going to read some quotes from these cards right now. One card was reported as saying, "I wish we had all been nicer." Another said, "Ivy, I wish I had been nicer. I wish I would have been your friend." Then another one says, "Ivy, you were really nice. I really like you. Everyone was mean to you and they shouldn't have been." Other cards were also apologies for teasing Ivy, as well as praise for Ivy's artwork. Remember, Ivy had a passion for art and was very gifted at creating art, specifically caricatures. It was said that at the time that Anita had been given these apology cards, the peers of Ivy had also decided to give Anita bracelets they made in honor of Ivy. Unfortunately, it has been said that, especially in the following few months after Ivy's disappearance and presumed loss, her mother unfortunately struggled immensely. She had given birth to a baby boy, and unfortunately she chose to put that baby up for adoption due to the fact that she was suffering so severely with her depression at the time. Unfortunately, it's also been said that Anita actually spent a while in a treatment center following an attempt on her own life. So this concludes most of what we know about Ivy Marie Leinen's case. This case is absolutely heartbreaking. Not only is this the story of a girl who went missing in the most upsetting of circumstances, but it also is the story of a girl who only wanted to be loved and accepted by her friends, but unfortunately was dealt a very difficult hand in life. Instead, she was faced with the devastating reality throughout most of her life of just how cruel other children could be. Ivy never got the chance to live out her life, her childhood, as a carefree child that she used to be. What I really want you to take away from this case is how important it is to be kind to others and to think about the hardships that they may be going through. It's been said that even though Ivy was initially a very happy and carefree child, due to the bullying, her mental state had greatly declined. Please take the time to educate yourself and those around you, especially children and teens, about how harmful it can be to bully other people. This bullying, of course, can have a very lasting impact on someone. I have actually chosen to link educational resources on bullying prevention in the description below. So if you have the time, please take it to look into these resources, and especially if you are a parent or caregiver in some capacity, please share it with young people around you. Though Ivy's case was not a direct result of her bullying, as her mother Anita would say, if Ivy's peers had been a little kinder and a little smarter, maybe her last year wouldn't have been so horrible. I know that this case has been very heavy and difficult to listen to, but I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to 11-year-old Ivy Marie Leinen's case, who unfortunately is presumed dead after going missing from Poplar, Montana on March 14th of 2010. Again, please take the time to look into those educational resources about bullying, bullying prevention, and the impact that bullying can have, especially on children, which, once again, I have linked in the description box below. If you enjoyed learning about this case or found it educational, please don't hesitate to leave a like, comment, subscribe, or share this video. Again, I do put out videos every Wednesday. Once again, my name is Brianna, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Vanished Memories. Bye!